stories that are happening. Our reporters are across the country to just bring us the latest. Here in studio, we shall be having quite some interesting conversations. The first conversation will be about empowering Kenyans digitally to ensure that we take up the online jobs and online-enabled jobs that are available. That conversation will be coming to you in a little bit. But first, my name is Betty Kiptum. Now, in studio, we have Jared Maranga, a policy advocacy officer at Ajira Digital, as well as Tanya Ngima, the managing director of Digitali Centers, DDD. Welcome on set, lady and gentlemen.
Thank you.
Let's just start with some background. Could you just give us the background of how Ajira Digital came to fore?
Ajira Digital Program is a government project run by the Ministry of ICT, funded by MasterCard Foundation and run by partners, KEPSA being one of the major partners, Immobilis and other affiliating partners. The program is purely intended at ensuring that young people in the country are provided with opportunities to grow their digital skills, as well as position the country as a digital skills hub in the region and globally. So that the young people are provided with different levels of training in different areas in the digital space, so that they're able to create more work related and be able to earn decent earnings out of their work in the digital space.
Right. Tanya, just give us an introduction to Digitali Centers.
Okay. So Digitali is actually the Swahili word for digital. So Digitali Centers is a brainchild of Digital Divide Data, and I'm the managing director. So we kicked off our project. In fact, we like to say that our project is a little bit of a COVID project. We kicked off our project on the 2nd of March, and of course, the country went into, pandemic, COVID. The first case was announced on the 14th. So we've been around for about 18 months. Right. Maybe the biggest difference between possibly the Ajira Centers and ours is we work with already existing entrepreneurs who owned cyber cafes or digital centers. So the reason we call them digital centers is because to a very large extent, they are not any longer in the role of helping people access the internet. So they do a lot more things, and that's really what the Digitali centers are. We have about 500 across the country in 45 out of 47 counties. And I'll be really excited to talk a little bit more about them, but that's how it came about. We work with already existing entrepreneurs who already had their own businesses, and our role has been to come in and to help them strengthen their revenue, create employment, and build capacity.
Right.
Yes.
Of course, the numbers show that digital is the way to go, yeah?
Yes.
Could you just take us through what exactly Ajira Digital is doing now for the youth to empower them?
In the country, Ajira has been devolved quite heavily through the partners. One, we work with constituencies through the members of parliament. So originally we used to have what we call the constituency innovation hubs, which morphed to become the Ajira Youth Empowerment Centers. So each constituency is actually meant to have a youth empowerment center. A number of them already have a number of those youth empowerment centers where we do a lot of training. Now the training is largely implemented by the Immobilis partner, who is ensuring that enough relevant skills are provided to the young people at that level. But number two, also we have what we're calling Ajira clubs within the TVETs and universities, which are also being operationalized by Immobilis, which is a partner within the Ajira project. And then your question was on how it is being...
how you're empowering the young people,
yes,
the actual things that you're doing.
Perfect. So it's in different levels. One is from training, and then the second part is after the training, then they are being linked up to different work platforms, but equally a number of them being requested to work with existing organizations that are providing digital work, so that they're able to earn out of it. But the third wing of it is that we are also looking at the government side. What can the government provide that can be worked on by people in the digital space. So we have a pilot project within the judiciary, for instance, where we are digitizing judiciary, and we have 2 work streams within the judiciary. We're doing transcription work. You notice currently, since the pandemic started, the court processes and proceedings have been happening within the digital space, largely through recordings and the virtual hearings and mentions and all that. So what happens within the judicial system, then they record those processes and proceedings, and then the Ajira comes in to transcribe those processes, whatever that had already happened, so that it's provided in the digital space, and that makes work much easier for people working in that space to access more content. And then other than that, we also looked at what already exists in the judiciary, and we're doing data entry work and scanning. So looking at what has already been happening in the judiciary previously, and so far we have scanned a total of 16 million pages of work that has been happening in judiciary over a number of years ago. And we were targeting 183 courts and 7 tribunals, which we have worked with. During COVID, things slowed a little because, of course, the courts ended up working at 30% capacity. It slowed a bit down, but at least quite a lot of work has happened around that place. But through the judicial work transcription process alone, we've been able to recruit up to 883 young people that have been working on that process continuously, while bringing on board other partners or companies that help young people work below, and youth innovation centers. I could pick one, for example, in Mbeere South, Youth Empowerment Center, which is a constituency innovation hub, more or less, that has brought on board almost 40 young people from that region that are transcribing real-life cases from the judiciary.
Tanya, could you just give us an overview of what positions Kenya as maybe the next digital frontier?
So one of the things that was really interesting, and the reason why, so we had a lot of conversations over the past couple of years about whether cyber cafes are, you know, they still will exist in the digital age. And that's because as data has become cheaper, as access to mobile devices has become more ubiquitous, really everyone has access on their phone. So a young person doesn't need to go to a cyber cafe to access the internet, right? So one of the things that we realized is that the cyber cafes and digital centers were revived because the government moved all services online. So right now, a school in Nyamira or Busia or somewhere in Central, if they want to do returns or they want to do assignments, if they don't have a printer and a computer, they will use the closest digital center to them. So that's one of the things that really revived the aspect of digital and revived the kind of work that the digital centers are doing. So with regards to positioning the country, I would say that Kenya is probably one of the countries that's a forerunner in terms of like digital work. We have quite a large number of organizations, including my parent organization, Digital Divide Data, which does impact sourcing, which is basically like a BPO, but with an impact metric, which is youth empowerment. So Kenya has really been at the forefront. Even if you look within East Africa, we've been at the forefront of, you know, there's quite a bit of online work. Ajira is doing quite a bit of work in terms of digitizing different agencies and making sure that that work is distributed in a way that the youth can participate. If you look at platforms, whether they are the local ones or the international ones, you notice that a lot of youth will prefer to actually sit in their houses or in distributed locations and do work online. So I think Tanya, those are some of the things
allow me
that...
to cut you short there. Apologies for that. I have to take the viewer to Kisumu, where Co2 Secretary General Francis Atwoli is speaking at the Labour Migration Seminar. This is at the Tom Mboya Labour College in Kisumu. Let's just listen into that.
In Tana River, and no Kenyan will miss employment. You will employ people from outside. The whole Dubai, you just say from 2021 to 2031, 10 years, we want to develop our Dubai. Infrastructure, big roads, industrial area, good airport, everything you impart there, We are heavily taxed and we are seeing what we are being taxed to. And we come up with a new Dubai. We extend it to the sea. From Hola to the ocean is 70 kilometers. In Dubai they are claiming land from water. And everybody will get it. We will manufacture whatever we want. Investors will come and invest. And there will be no poverty. Just simple as that. New Shanghai in China. In 1992, we were involved in Goldenberg scandal. Those who have history of these countries, somebody like Wafula understands, me and two, then Dr. Kot might have heard of about Goldenberg. The one is pushing Okemo and Gishuru. And whatever they do, Mzungu is a detailed person, I told Barasa. They will have to go. Mzungu is not like we who say, no, they will go. So what happened? New Shanghai started in 1992. 2002 when Kibaki was coming in, that was 10 years. They had finished New Shanghai in China. If you go to New Shanghai, it's a marvelous place. Wonderful place. Unbelievable. Massive investments. The whole world economy is in China. Let nobody tell you. Because they decided they want to come out of poverty. In 1986, when we were taking over Kotu, 86, Wafula was there, Sam Kubai was here, was there, Chebi was there, Kwaro was there, Wafula was there in trade union movement. Most of those people who are here, Mushua was there, those people who are here, they were there. 2001, we took over Kotu, me I took over Kotu. 1986, Mugala took over Kotu, December 26th. That time there was a war in Vietnam. People were fighting in Vietnam. Kenya was ahead of Vietnam. Go to Vietnam now. It's unbelievable. In 1957, Ghana became independent in 1957. The same year with South Korea. Go to South Korea. It's unbelievable. These things I'm telling you. And you as trade unions, you are supposed to be talking these things on a daily basis. Why are we poor? Why are we not improving terms and conditions of our people? Why are we not increasing people's salaries? We can't be making noise all the time trying to push employers who doesn't have anything that we want to improve our CBS. And we are lazy, we are not planning, our governments are not giving us a leeway to economically compete, attract both indirect and direct investments. They leave us to quarrel with poor employers. There are no industries here. You need to go to these places, I'm telling you. And when people said we are changing, like now people are talking about e-commerce, digital economy, driven by smart economy. Nobody is taking interest. Even within ourselves, how much do we understand? How far do we understand about digital economy? And it is replacing the normal economy, you know, how people build economy and so on. Hata ukisikia watu wakisema bottom, there will be nothing like bottom up. That is the stupidity ya mwisho. In digital economy, there is nothing like that. You can just, and it is big shame for someone to talk about bottom up when the world is transforming itself in E or digital economy. Huh? And this person...
Well, that That is the KOTU Secretary General Francis Atwoli speaking at the Labour Migration Seminar, which is ongoing at the Tom Mboya Labour College in Kisumu. We now want to take you to Serena Hotel, where the ICT Cabinet Secretary Joe Musheru is speaking. He is at the ICT Talent Cultivation for Kenya's Digital Economy. That is the ICT-CS, Joe Musheru speaking there at the ICT Talent Cultivation for Kenya's Digital Economy. Let's listen into that.
Demo, you've Simama, we clap for you at least. Thank you. So, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is a pleasure to officiate the launch of this white paper on ICT talent cultivation for Kenya's digital economy. This white paper not only provides relevant findings on the situation of our local ICT talent development, but also provides clear guidelines and recommendations to better improve the existing programs in place by academia, industry, and the government. Kenyan youth are the most critical resource that the country has and will ever have in the foreseeable future. Therefore, investing in them through the provision of relevant skills and training is of utmost importance as they continue to face challenges and risks largely attributed to skills gaps. It is important for both government, academia, and the private sector to devise relevant programs that directly address the challenges they face with urgency. This includes collaboration to help academia update their curriculum to cater to the changing technological developments and market demands, as well as provision of internships and attachments. That said, the launch of the white paper is timely, especially with the growth of the digital economy and the digital transformation of industries taking precedence. As citizens, we take pride in the fact that Kenya is a regional leader in terms of broadband connectivity, general ICT infrastructure, mobile money, and mobile banking services. As such, the ICT sector is set to account for up to 8% of the country's GDP and is estimated to increase within the next few years. This can be attributed to internet access, which has continued to spur economic growth and contribute to the government's development of the digital economy blueprint. The blueprint provides a framework to improve our ability to catapult economic growth within the country and highlight digital skills and values as one of the critical pillars. The events of last year significantly accelerated the digitization globally and opened up new opportunities for all. From individuals, organizations, and governments at large, the pandemic led to digitizing of services by governments such as telemedicine. Among businesses, there was a massive shift in operations through digitizing of bricks and mortar businesses that saw a surge in e-commerce. Additionally, we saw an increase in automating operations to managing supply chains using new technologies such as Internet of Things, and this is just to name but a few of the monumental changes that were accelerated last year. With this in mind, this transformation requires a massive investment in the relevant skill sets that will allow for youth and the old alike to partake and take advantage of the opportunities presented by the digital economy and the gig economy. Kenya's gig economy is expected to grow by 33% over the next 5 years. And as such, through programs such as the Ajira Digital Program, we are able to equip youth, who are 1.2 million so far, with the relevant skills to seek employment opportunities from anywhere across the world and thereby contribute to the growing gig economy. We have set a target of 15 million young people all working online by the year 2030. We hope it can be done sooner. With the 1.2 million that are already working today, if they can just take time and be able to mentor 10, then in a year we can get to even 12 million. In another year, even the old people can actually get into the gig economy, the ones older than 35. So the government has made significant strides in paving way for the digital economy. The National Broadband Strategy aimed at transforming Kenya into a knowledge-based economy through the provision of quality broadband services to all citizens countrywide. And consequently, this will guarantee provision of fast, reliable, and affordable internet to all by guaranteeing access to information, resources, and opportunities online. By so doing, the government not only aims at increasing access to broadband coverage, but also increasing digital literacy and the use of online services. So as we gear towards reaping the benefits of the digital economy, it is important as a country to invest heavily in the human resource and building capacity across all levels. As such, in order to meet the needs and the gaps of the ICT workforce, the government has a wide range of initiatives at various levels, and these include the digital literacy program in schools that is increasing digital preparedness at an early age and inspiring our children to want to work in the technology industry. It also includes programs targeted at industry talent needs, especially the Presidential Digital Talent Program. This was achieved through collaboration with industry partners such as Huawei. The program provides government internships, industry internships, and training with our partners. In addition to the Presidential Digital Talent Program, the Huawei DigiTrack program has worked with the ministry through the Ajira digital programs to provide digital skills and training to those within underserved communities. The Huawei ICT Academy program and the Seeds of the Future programs also provide training to those pursuing studies at various institutions of higher learning. To Huawei and to UNESCO, thank you for this white paper. It has given us food for thought, and we will work with our partners to consider how to implement the various recommendations, those that require government leadership, as well as those that require private sector engagement. I believe that this will inform the decisions and policies that govern ICT talent cultivation in Kenya and make a significant difference to the opportunities for our youth. It is now my single pleasure to launch the white paper on ICT talent cultivation for Kenya's digital economy. Asanteni sana.
That was the ICT CS, Joe Musheru. He was speaking at the launch of the white paper on cultivating digital talent in Kenya. And he has said quite a number of things, including how critical it is to build the capacity of young people to take up the online jobs, as well as the infrastructure that is going to be expanded, including the broadband there. And in studio, we are having quite the fitting conversation here with Jared Maranga, the Policy and Advocacy Officer at Ajira Digital, as well as Tanya Ngima, the Managing Director of Digitali Centers, DDD. Now, Tanya, you have heard the CS speak. Quite some telling numbers. 8% of the Kenya's GDP is contributed to by ICT. This puts us at quite a strong position, right? Continue with the points that you were giving us before we went on that link.
Remind me what your question was. No, I remember your question. I'm only joking. Okay, so you'd asked me how do we position the country as a leader in this space. And I actually think that we already are there. So just following up from what the CS has said, one of the things we noticed when COVID happened is that a lot of businesses moved away from brick and mortar, not because they wanted to, but because circumstances forced them. So we'd been having a lot of conversations with small businesses, whether it was micro entrepreneurs or, you know, a little bit larger than that. We had been having a lot of conversations around getting them to look at a hybrid model of operation and of revenue, which is, you know, have an e-commerce channel and have an online channel, use social media, as well as have your brick and mortar location. What happened is that COVID really forced our hands, because at the point at which, you know, lockdowns were launched, as social distancing was being encouraged, a lot of entrepreneurs really had to quickly figure out an e-commerce platform and go online. So we saw the emergence of a lot of platforms that were previously just social platforms, and now they became marketplaces. But even if you look at larger organizations, and I know digital transformation is maybe a word that we have thrown around so much that it's become a buzzword, but even if you look at the larger spaces, you look at corporates and larger organizations that have regional offices, what you'll notice is that if they want to do a digital transformation, for example, they want to launch a fully online channel, they will actually start with Kenya before they launch it to the rest of the the regional or the other countries they have in the Pan-African space. And the reason for that is even from a skills perspective, from a familiarity with getting online perspective, from a mobile penetration perspective, Kenya is still leading very significantly. But one of the key things I think that has really brought in the importance of a digital world and for people to go online, I think has been the consistent commitment by government to actually move a lot of services online. Because we've seen countries that try to move services online, and as long as it remains an option, the populace will basically just do what is easiest, which is, you know, go queue, submit your documentation in person, because we tend to stay in a place of comfort. But by the government's commitment first to take all e-government and e-citizen services online, it already pushed us to start thinking about being in the online world. So I think they made it a lot easier for people to start interacting with the digital world, just because we had already started engaging. If you need to apply for a passport, then you basically have to go online and you have to figure out how to submit your paperwork. So it had pushed us into getting comfortable with the online world, such that when businesses now had to accept payments online, it wasn't a very jarring experience. And I think we are fortunate in the fact that we also have mobile money that has a significant penetration, which makes it easy for people to do work online. So what I would say is that we probably need to do more in terms of skills and capacity building for the youth, and especially access, because one of the things that we've noticed, and when we are in Nairobi, we take this a lot for granted. If you approach a young person who's at the University of Nairobi or any of the universities within Nairobi or the outskirts, and you ask them, if you have an entrepreneurial idea, do you know who to go to support you? They will likely know or know someone who knows. Okay. This was heartbreaking on so many levels, but 70% of our 500 digital centers are in peri-urban and rural areas. When we go to the field, because we've probably done about 5 major field visits in the last 18 months, the further you get out of Nairobi, the less access there is to knowledge, information, financing, etc. Like a young person in the middle of, you know, some community in Makueni where you travel for almost 20 minutes without seeing any sign of life, and then you find a digital center. When you ask a young person in that community about a business and about e-commerce, they almost don't know what you're talking about. So we have taken certain things for granted because we have access in Nairobi, whether it's access to information, to knowledge, to finance, or even to someone who knows how to direct you or how to support you. So the capacity building and the skills building does really need to be done outside of Nairobi, and I suppose that's what we're talking about. So the thing we probably need to do is we need to democratize access to the internet, access to digital, access to information. A young person in Homa Bay or in Busia or Nyamira needs to know that they can go online and that they can do online work. So I think that's where we need to build capacity, but we really, I think, as a country are at the forefront of this digital space and of, you know, being online and being comfortable with being online to make our lives easier.
Right. I will get back to you on how Digitali Centers is just doing to bridge that gap in a bit. But first, Jared, could you tell us what the government, specifically the Ministry of ICT, is doing to reach out to the youth in Mashinani?
Several ways. Number one, through the Ajira Youth Empowerment Centers, as I indicated, each constituency of the 290 constituencies are ideally meant to have an Ajira Youth Empowerment Center. The ministry comes in, of course, with funding from MasterCard, as I indicated from the word go, then to some extent support in equipping those centers, give staff to those centers. As we speak right now, we are at 101 constituencies fully operationalized with staff there and support mechanism to help young people to train along the way. But equally, something else that we're doing through the implementing partner, that is Immobilis, for example, they are doing local trainings in the local in the community, actually calling community training. So other than that, we also notice the rolling out of the Ajira clubs in institutions of higher learning and through TVETs, and that more or less helps young people come more on board. I'm trying to say, for example, a youth empowerment center, if you drive around whichever longest distance you go to, you will somehow come across a youth empowerment center. I'm looking at a case in Viwa, for example, in Homa Bay, that are doing a significant job in the judiciary. Guys staying quite away from Nairobi, but still digitizing courts in Nairobi. And then, of course, the support through the studio Mashinani, for example, that is being worked on by the ministry, and young people are getting opportunities to showcase their talent in those studio Mashinani centers, not only showcasing their talents, but also getting the opportunity to more or less roll it, get it moving if you want to record, I guess, some of the things that are happening. And I know this is a collaboration between the ministry and KBC, so to speak. So then, yes, the ministry really doing a lot, and to pick what the CS just said, that we're looking at the economy, or that the digital economy growing by 33%. That simply means with that growth in that space comes with it growth in many areas, not only employment, not only work per se, but also platforms, expansion of platforms through which a lot of those things will happen, including payment and this buying and selling, you say e-commerce platforms, work platforms, and so on and so forth. So then the direction that the ministry is taking, and the government generally in partnership with all other implementing partners, will more or less go a long way to expand that space. And when it takes expanding that space, it simply means that we have more work for people who will work in that space, more work for businesses, and more opportunity from businesses to the individuals that are work ready in that space. And to do that work ready part of it is through the trainings that are happening. They're either happening in the youth empowerment centers, or they are happening in the clubs, different clubs. And now we're thinking about how do we look at the specialized areas, because for example, different clubs, different youth empowerment centers would probably be having more specialized skills, because in the digital space we're talking about digitally enabled work and digital work. So there is work that will be done digitally, and there is work that will be done by the support of the digital space. So we talk about digitally enabled work. And this is what, for example, Kenya Private Sector Alliance is supporting through what we call private sector engagement.
Right. Tanya, could you just take us through the bridging of this gap now? What Digitally Centers is doing, and maybe what more can be done by various stakeholders?
Okay, so when we started having this conversation around how to address the supply and the demand side of youth unemployment, one of the things that we've realized is that it needs a multi-stakeholder engagement. So I like that there are so many different organizations who are doing different things, because the problem, even from a continental perspective, what we keep calling the youth bulge, and we keep asking whether it's a time bomb or an opportunity, it needs as many people to really participate. And one of the things that has been really exciting is, a couple of the ways that we've collaborated with different institutions. But let me start by speaking about what we specifically do, and basically give a little bit more context into the Digitally Centers. So as I mentioned, we have about just under 500 Digitally Centers in 45 out of 47 counties. So there's only 2 counties where we don't have a presence, and we've been working to see how we can get into those. It tends to be the ASA regions, which is the arid and semi-arid regions. There's 3 main things that we do with these digital centers in our network, and they are basically along our 2 biggest KPIs. One of our KPIs is digital inclusion, which they are bona fide doing, and the second one is, of course, job creation and reduction of youth unemployment. So the 3 things that we do with our digital centers and how we support them. Remember, I said these were entrepreneurs who already existed before we came into play, and that's one of the pivots that we did because of COVID, because we were unable to roll out our project in the way we had anticipated. So we just went and we tried to figure out what's the best route to market and what's the best route to effectiveness. So we work with digital centers that already existed before we came into the market, and we help them in 3 ways. One, we do capacity building and training, and capacity building covers a bunch of things. There's how to do basic bookkeeping so that you are a credible risk when you go to borrow money from an institution, because one of the biggest challenges is really the credit gap. And then trainings are, we help them to figure out how to do marketing. So we have a course called Marketing 101. We also have a course that's probably been the biggest hit. It's called Design by Digitally. So we are very market driven in the sense that we respond to the needs that the digital centers actually face on the ground. So a lot of them are coming to us and saying, you know, I have a client, they keep asking me for logos, they keep asking me to make business cards, and I've basically just been doing like letters. Can you show me how to, you know, create a good logo? And then when we ran this class, and we've had quite a couple of digital centers participating, we take them through everything from, you know, the psychology of color, what this brand represents, and then they've even extended it to the point where they have set up, some of them have actually set up like a division that just does design. All right, so that's capacity building and training. And with the trainings, we do a lot of trainings. We even have partnered with government institutions, especially around tax time, to show them how to file returns properly, so that if a university student walks in, they don't live with, if they want to be registered as a taxpayer, they want to live with a PIN certificate, but they don't want for someone to create an obligation out of nowhere. So we teach them the right way to engage with online government systems. And a lot of it is really around training them on things like NHIF, NSSF, etc., HELB, all these NTSA systems, KRA, filing returns, etc. So that's one pillar. The other pillar is asset financing. In fact, I think for maybe 80% of the digitally centers who joined, they joined because they had heard about a digital center that had received some asset financing. We do our financing a little bit differently than traditional lenders. One, we have recognized that micro businesses and small businesses don't always have bank records that are going to enable them to borrow. So we also accept mobile money statements. And then we also place a very large premium on what we call engagement and participation. So when a digital center joins our network, they are assigned to an account manager. It's like an RM. And this account manager's role is to really understand their business, understand their ambitions, understand where they want to go. And then if they want to get financing, by the time they're asking for financing, we kind of have a wholesome view, sort of like an expanded KYC of what this entrepreneur is about. We know, are they serious about their ambition? If they want to buy equipment that costs $1,500, do we have enough confidence that they're going to be able to repay? And then once that is ascertained, how we do the financing is we don't give them the money. So if someone wants equipment, it costs $700, we don't give them the cash. We do everything with regards to finding a vendor, procurement, engaging the vendors to make sure that the warranties are in place and that they are on call to support our entrepreneurs and our digital center owners. We organize transportation, installation, so the equipment goes to the closest courier office that we are using, the closest one to them. So the most they need to do is maybe leave for about an hour and come back. And the reason why we did that is because we recognized, one, we are able to get better discounts if we are going in as an organization that is doing bulk purchases, and we can pass those discounts on to the digital center. The second one is, if you think about when we were heavy in the pandemic and there was a curfew, a digital center in, let me talk about Garissa. A digital center in Garissa would either need to leave their digital center with their attendant for a minimum of 3 days, because they need to travel to Nairobi, go maybe downtown to Kirinyaga Road, or go somewhere, look for equipment, engage with a couple of different vendors, negotiate, and then maybe go the next day, procure the item. By the time they're actually getting back to their location, there's an opportunity cost of between 2 and 3 days. And during that time, one of the things that they will tell you they're most scared of is leaving their premises of business under someone's care, and then that person sort of steals from them. So a lot of them do feel the need to be present at their digital centers. So we saved them that opportunity cost and the hassle. And also sometimes we have had cases where this equipment can be pretty delicate. If they're going to transport it, let's say for example by Sako or by Matatu, there's a chance that when it gets to the other location, some parts have moved, and then we have another whole issue with having to figure out how to fix equipment that is in Garissa or that is in Busia. So that is how we do our financing. The repayment period starts when the equipment is actually at the location of the digital center. And then we're also able to help guide them. So one of the things we know about entrepreneurs, small and big ones, is that they can be quite opportunistic. They can say they want 10 pieces of equipment. Well, they only have capacity to absorb 2 pieces of equipment. So what our role as the account managers is to guide them on, this is what you procure. And then once you generate enough revenue from this, the next thing that you procure is maybe like a bigger printer or a media center because we have photography and videography centers, or procure like a heat press machine, and then after that you can procure what we call a vinyl cutter, which is a big piece of equipment, and it's quite expensive for a small business. And then the third one is B2B. So when we talk about B2B, we basically are working with organizations. So we have about 5 or 6 clients that we've been working with, and what you will probably come across businesses that are based in Nairobi is that they understand the Nairobi ecosystem pretty well. They have a pretty good foothold on their footprint in Nairobi. They want to expand, but they're not sure how to do it, and they don't want to spend a lot of money on paying rent, hiring staff in some location, for example, in Nyeri. So what we do is we connect them with our digital center. So our digital center owners and these entrepreneurs are actually people with diplomas. A lot of them have university degrees. They've done BCom, they've done computer sciences. They're very articulate. They're actually well studied and well-read business owners. So what we do is we are connecting organizations with our digital centers, and our digital centers can carry out some activities on the ground. One of the most recent projects we did was with a company in the renewable energy space. They needed to recruit sales staff in some parts of central region, and what they do is that when they have a recruitment drive, they usually have to hire HR people in the office because they get 1,000+ applications. So what we did is we had our digital centers, instead of the organization doing it from their office, our digital centers were able to handle the traffic, sift through the applications, filter the 95% of candidates who weren't ideal, use their physical location as an interview ground, and even when the organization engaged them, the area sales managers came in and used that physical location of the digital center to actually engage with them, and that has been, I think, the place where they've been meeting anytime they need to have like a meeting between all the candidates who were engaged as employees in that physical location. But the use cases are a lot. We have organizations that want to recruit merchants on the ground, and they use our digital centers to get people to familiarize themselves with the app or the service. We have organizations that we've done some marketing and branding, especially rebranding. If you don't want to hire an agency and you want to go into some far-flung location where you have clients but you can't justify the spend, you use our digital centers for a fraction of the cost, and we've probably been able to save our clients between 40 and 60% of what it would cost them to do it themselves.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's quite elaborate and very important that the empowerment is there and it's ongoing. Jared, if you could just take the viewer through maybe some things that they need to do to position themselves for these opportunities that are there.
Maybe I'll start by illustrating the whole process from where we start and where it ends. Number one, as I indicated, fairly every constituency has a youth empowerment center. In fact, some constituencies have more than one youth empowerment centers. The first thing to do is, do you have a skill to do something? Whatever skill it is, you are a plumber, do you have a certain skill? Ajira will support you in that case. Let's start from people who probably don't feel like they don't have a skill. So we get to those youth empowerment centers. If we are in the TVETs or institutions of higher learning, we get to those Ajira clubs already established there. Then they will go through a training, which runs for about 2 or so days, and then they will be placed under mentorship for a period of a whole month. So that period of a whole month, they are working with a certain individual or company that is already doing what you have learned. So for example, you learned on skills on transcription, skills on virtual assistance, and so on and so forth. So then you put under mentorship for a longer period of time, about a month, after which now you're free to start working. Not that you're not free during mentorship, but that towards then when you're done with your mentorship, you can now transition towards doing your own thing. Now, once you've transitioned to doing your own thing, now again, the government in conjunction with the private sector links you up with organizations or with platforms that will enable you to have that opportunity to continue offering the services that you're able to offer on the digital space. Now that we talk about private linkages to private sector. So then, like at the moment, we have partnered with about 990 organizations and platforms through which now we link up these young people to work with. In fact, we had started a conversation with Digitally a while back as one of the partners that would work in that space. So what young people ideally need is, number one, attend those areas of training, then be trained, go through the mentorship. Apparently what happens is that a number of us lose hope, especially during mentorship. You look at, we could do 100 people training, then about 70 or so will transition to mentorship, about 50 or so will complete mentorship. There is a lack of patience amongst young people to stay through the mentorship process to the end, and somehow that reduces their impact in the digital space. So one of the things, and then we keep on encouraging them, is to be patient. Nothing comes easy. You have to be there over time. I mean, you have to grow, and growth has to come pole pole, so to speak. So when they've done the whole of that training and they are able now to start working with that organization, in fact, there is what the ministry has created, the Ajira Portal. People would visit the www.ajiradigital.go.ke, the platform that in the long run is intended to be a one-stop shop, that you get and get a job, pick a job, bid for it, and get. That's the long-term goal for that project. But at the moment, that portal is able to allow you, for example, get there, apply for training, and apparently the training are happening twofold, both physically and in the virtual space. So you can book up the training and you take it up either virtually or physically, depending on where you are. If it's virtual, still mentorship will go through it virtually or physically, depending again on where you are and how you arrange for it. So yes, that is how people will be easily getting into that space. But again, we have partnered with some BPOs to extend the level of reach to the young people. For example, our pilot project at the judiciary, we already are working with 2 BPOs, and those 2 BPOs are more or less placed. They have both satellite campuses or satellite centers. For example, the one that I mentioned in Dhiwa, there is another one in Swahili Port in Mombasa. We have one in Kirinyaga. I mean, there are several around the country. And then the idea is that where that center is, the young people who work in that center should be from that locality. So like that, then we're able to decentralize finance, we're able to decentralize work, and people work. The challenge that most people now have is the definition of what work is and what employment is. So you will find someone who is working online, earning 200,000, 300,000 a month. When you ask that person who is employed, tell you, I am unemployed. So people have not been able to really distill that even in employment, you're actually working. So that we deal with work as opposed to employment. You know, we need to be in a tie so that you look like you can wear your tie and work from home, and perfectly very well. We have very many virtual assistants working remotely. And the idea of, I think the idea of the ministry, and by the way, I'm not speaking on behalf of the ministry, the minister did. The work of the ministry then at the end of the day is to ensure that we have opened up that space to allow a lot of our people, not unemployed people. And again, here we go wrong. We're looking at people who are unemployed to use that space. The digital space is open for work. Create different applications that come up. There is this case where we have young people in a club, for example, in one club in an institution, who are very good in software development. And when they are very good in software development, they are able to develop applications that will support institutions, different institutions, businesses, and so on and so forth. So what we encourage such a club to do is take up the digital space and be able to work within Ajira. You'll be able now to be linked to, for example, KBC wants a certain application that will support real live streaming. I know you already have, but you could want something to extend it. And there is a club somewhere that's able to do that. Then you're able to support it. Or you think of a club in Kisitau, for example, or whichever town it is. And there's a lot of work within the counties that can actually be done by young people through the digital space. These things to do with transcription, data entry, people doing scanning documents, in fact even giving the technical skill. Imagine if you have a club in Nairobi University that is highly hinged into architecture, and they're able to provide architectural services to a county. That would not only be cheaper to the county, but it will also be empowering the young people to provide what they already have, so they don't have to wait until they get formal employment, so to speak.
Well, we have about 3 minutes to go in this conversation, and I would like to pick your thoughts on how you reach the formal education, people in formal education through TVETs as well as universities. How are you going to reach, or how are you reaching the people in informal or those who are not educated?
The people who are, how we are reaching people in the informal sector or informal outside employment. Outside academia,
yes.
so to speak. That's where the youth empowerment centers are coming in. And earlier on I mentioned about community trainings, working within the community. We go to a community, for example, wherever you come from, and then we ask what are the needs. There is something that the CS talked about, the Kenya Digital, National Digital Master Plan. I kind of mentioned it in his talk. The idea of that master plan is, for example, a larger services by the government have moved to the digital space, and we are still moving to the digital space. We want people to file their taxes. We want people to check whatever it is, all services that you need online. How then do we fully get into that space if the mamamboga we are talking about will not be empowered to get that skills that are able to do it? So we get to the time of filing our taxes, even ourselves in the digital space, we still look for someone to file our taxes. Maybe because we feel we don't have those skills. So that is one thing that digital master plan is addressing. Looking at how then do we empower every other person in that space, outside everyone else, including the people in the community, so they're able to fit into that space, be able now to embrace all things around the digital space, embrace mobile money. Now, of course, everyone is embracing mobile money. Of course, if there is any people who really aren't into it, they are very few as we speak. So a very good sign that everyone is moving towards that space. So then maybe with a larger engagement with partners like Digitally. Now Digitally is in a space of talking with entrepreneurs already are in the field, and if they're helping expand that space, for example, it will then mean, and we are also training from the other side, for example, or we're also trying to look for opportunities, because another thing that we're doing as Ajira is look at what are the available opportunities both in the private sector and in government that can be provided in that digital space. There's something that the CS mentioned there, that he mentioned something to do with 1.2 million jobs. That's a research that was done by TIFA Research a few months ago, and it clearly indicated that we have, through Ajira project, we've been able to link up 1.2 or enable 1.2 million young people to get into the digital space. And that's the whole idea from government and from the Ajira point of view, that we're able to expand that space and get more people into that space, allow people to work, not only making work efficient, but also making opportunities available. And finally, I'm looking at, for example, other sectors of ministries, departments, and agencies. The judiciary, for example, is our pilot. And as I had indicated earlier on, we've been able to hire 883 young people. We've touched 103 courts. We've touched 7 tribunals. We've been able to transcribe and enter and scan the data that they already have. And that makes work easier, not only for the judges, but also for the lawyers. You know, the lawyer is seated somewhere and he wants to refer to a certain case. We no longer now have to walk to the Supreme Court to look for that case, but you can also get to the CTS account and get that case.
All right.
So we get more space in that area.
All right, we've come to the close of the conversation. I'll give you each 30 seconds to give us your closing remarks. I'll start with you, Tanya.
I think what we want to do is we want to position digital centers as partners for organizations. So let's stop thinking about them as a hole in the wall. Let's actually think about them as bona fide entrepreneurs who are in 45 counties and who you can use if you want to expand or get visibility for your product. There's a whole range of things that we can do together. So that's what we want to do with Digitally centers.
Awesome. Yourself?
Let me encourage everyone, young, old, whoever it is, to get into that space. Visit www.ajiradigital.go.ke. All opportunities are available there. Trainings are available there. Then you can pick them up. We have no option. This is the direction we're going to. COVID came. It was negative, but somehow it pushed that into a space that largely would have taken us a lot of time to get into. But now that we are in that space, we encourage all of us to embrace it and create more opportunities for young people, even for organizations, private organizations that feel they have opportunities that can be provided in the digital space. The Ajira project is already here to help you digitize your work.
Awesome. Thank you very much for joining us.
Asante.
Thank you.
Well, we have been speaking with Jared Maranga, the Policy Advocacy Officer at Ajira Digital, as well as Tanya Ngima, the Managing Director at Digitali Centers. And we have been talking about matters digital empowerment, ensuring that you are empowered to take up your space in the digital space and make sure that you get those opportunities. Well, we take a quick break here on BizCheck. When we come back, a conversation about customs control. What is prohibited, what is restricted to go through borders. Do stay with us.
I hope you've given her a warm welcome. This is Magdalene Chepkoech. She's our new student.
They have Malimu. Hata wamenitengenezea simu. Kinyanjui.
Are you sure you know all those things?
Who do you think you are talking to? Kenyaju's online shop will bring it to her.
Julia, you cannot believe what just happened.
What?
Imagine the selfie I posted 30 minutes ago. It has now 9 likes.
Tito Mjuanjuku unasikiza, there's something called protocol. Respect it.
Do you pay school fees like the rest of us?
Of course, yes!
Then sit down like the rest of us.
Classmates, every Saturday on KBC.
My name is Jeneria Leklele and I'm a wildlife warrior.
This dry landscape is home to an animal that is revered all around the world.
I love lions because many people think that lions are dangerous, but lions are not dangerous actually.
So far we found a footprint of hyenas and leopard on this riverbed, but we haven't yet seen any signs of lions.
Lions are actually disappearing in the world. If nothing will be done in Kenya actually, I think we'll be losing lions in the next 20 years.
The young people are sending smoke signals. We've not used them in a while. And so it's a bit confusing. But they're actually sending signals that all is not right.
Yeah.
I think that's the big thing. And that is why we are so taken aback by it.
So what you're saying is the schools are burning because our homes are burning.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's just that we've been so pacified. And I say this unfortunately, even when we need to speak about things, we don't.
Yeah.
Because we've been routined to keep quiet, you know, when the boss says stand, you stand. When they say sit, you sit.
Yeah.
These young guys are not from that school of thought.
Kama ni raha kuona mmoja, basi tafakari kuona wawili. Mie na pacha wangu tutaendesha meli ya Dira ya Magwiji kuanzia Jumamosi hii tarehe 27 mwezi Novemba katika KBC Channel 1. Usikose.
Ni sauti ya mwaliko wa kituo chetu cha Kisomali Iftin FM ikipiga mbizi na njaramba kukutana na mashabiki katika road show babu kubwa hapa jijini Nairobi tarehe 27 mwezi huu. Msafara utaanza katikati ya jiji la Nairobi kuelekea South C, South B, maeneo ya Eastlands kama vile Komarok, Donholm, Fedha, Eastleigh na kuregea katikati ya jiji la Nairobi. Jitokeza tarehe 27 mwezi huu, kutane ana kwa ana na watangazaji wa Iftin FM. Vichekesho na mahanja mtele vitateremka kwa mpigo re.
Hal eber hal dhibic sagaal Iftin FM ilayska ummadda.
Thank you very much for staying with us. You are watching BizCheck here on KBC Channel 1. My name is Betty Kiptum. Now, in our second hour of the program, we want to discuss matters customs control. Do you have any idea what is restricted or prohibited when you are going to outside borders, when you're going outside Kenya or coming into Kenya? Now, we are with Robert Kirer. He is the manager of Customs and Border Control at the JKIA. Thank you for joining us. Yes, karibu sana.
Asante.
Could you just take us through an overview of the process of checking the goods that come into the country and how that works?
Okay, thank you very much. I'm Robert Kirer from Kenya Revenue Authority, Customs and Border Control. Currently, I'm based at Jomo Kenyatta International Airport.
Yes.
I would say one of the busiest airports in Eastern Central Africa. And critically, what we do as customs agency, first is we are one of the border control agency at the airport, and we undertake the whole border control matters related to border control in terms of clearance of persons and goods coming into the country and leaving the country. Then another key role for customs is the enforcement of prohibitions and restrictions as per the customs law. Then the issues of protection of society. We do this by enforcing various laws and conventions that have been put in place to really protect our society. Then we do passenger clearance, crew clearance, baggage clearance, and we facilitate the clearance of passengers. And finally, while we are doing that, we collect taxes. Yeah, what is payable to the government, we collect at that point. Thank you.
All right. When someone arrives at the airport,
Yes.
just take us through that process from arrival until the time they've been cleared by customs.
Oh, thank you very much. When you arrive at a customs airport, an international arrival, first you've got to disembark from the aircraft. You come through, you are cleared by Port Health. Port Health, they are mandated to check on issues concerning World Health Organization regulations. Like now, it's mandatory to come in with a negative PCR for COVID. Issues of yellow fever, just to ensure that there is no transmission of communicable diseases. So once you're done with Port Health, you'll be admitted into the country, and you've got to go through passport control for admission into the country by immigration. So Department of Immigration will admit you into the country. Once you've been admitted, you will approach the customs area. And when you come to customs, at this point, this is where now you have to claim your baggage, which you had checked in, or you're bringing into the country. So once you've done that, a passenger, you've got upon claiming your bags, you've got two channels you can choose to use as a passenger. We have the green channel, where you have nothing to declare. That one, you just need to come through. Then you have the red channel, that is where you have something to declare to customs. So you make a determination. In customs terms, a passenger makes a declaration by even just choosing the channel that you've gone through.
Okay.
So if you have anything, probably you need to declare, and you decide to go to the green channel. Already, as per customs, you've made a declaration that this is where I'm going, and that's a full declaration, because probably you had something that you needed to declare to customs, but you've decided to use the green channel. So at all international airports, you'd find that there are 2 channels clearly marked for a passenger upon claiming their bag to choose either to go to the red channel or to the green channel.
Okay.
Yes.
So what informs this decision? And are there people who normally use the green channel or the red channel? How do you determine that?
Okay, what would happen is, first is customs, we've been able to categorize passengers into 3 categories. Quickly, we have category A. Those are passengers who are changing residence, coming to Kenya, returning students. They fall into that particular category. Then we have delegates who are just visiting Kenya probably for a meeting, high delegation, VIP, military personnel. Those ones are category A. And ordinarily what category A is, they're supposed to use the green channel. Then we have category B. Those are tourists visiting the country for a period not more than 3 months. Yeah, so those are category B. So because we really need to support our tourism industry, so those ones, they use the green channel. Then we have category C. These are an holder of a Kenyan passport or a resident card who's been out of the country for more than 24 hours. Yeah, you fall under this particular category. And then irrespective of the category you are, if you have anything that you need to declare to customs, you're supposed to use the red channel. So what would happen is, we categorize passengers in these various categories for us to be able now to apply their various concession. Passengers from different category do enjoy different concession that you can bring into the country duty free.
Okay.
Yeah, so that is the whole purpose. So we'd find by the time you're appearing to customs, you should have made a determination that, do you have anything to declare to customs? Yes or no. If I don't have anything, you go through the green channel. So what would happen, customs officers will always be there to ensure that we're able to pick out what would suspect to be you're in the wrong channel. Yeah. So you'd find our officers have been trained to be able not to check what we call categorization, profiling in terms of customs, to see that probably you are in the right category. And we usually do that by tactfully interviewing a passenger, and at times we usually ask, give us your passport. Your passport gives us your travel history. We're able to determine how wide you've traveled, your last country of departure before you landed in Kenya, because various flights have been categorized, countries, origins have been categorized based on the past interception that have been made, based on probably where there could have been cases from those particular countries, or some airlines which are being abused. So when we're able now to determine at that point that you need any further checks and probably any other advanced information that we could be having. Yes.
So once you've selected your channel, assuming you've now gone to the red channel, yeah,
Yes.
you've declared that you have something for you need to pay your customs. So how does that work from there?
Okay. As I had mentioned earlier, our key role is first is the border control functions, and looking out for prohibited items and restricted. So probably I could start with for payment of taxes. Our number one would be, all passengers enjoy a concession of up to $500. So if you are coming to the country, you bought items up to $500, that one, you'll come into the country duty free.
Okay.
Yeah, anything above that, taxes will be collected. And we'll go through the whole process of collection of taxes, in that you've got to make a declaration to customs that I'm carrying goods worth, say for example, $1,000. I've enjoyed my concession of 500. I need to pay taxes on the 500. So at that point, the officer now will make an assessment and tell you taxes are applicable. These are the applicable taxes. Using now our common external tariff, we use each different items attract different rates. So we use the different rates just to apply taxes. And then at that point, critical for us is the transaction value, the value of the goods that you're bringing to the country. And would encourage really passengers to be giving us the actual. And we can only determine the value of an item that you have if you can prove that, okay, this is the money that you paid or the amount payable for you to really have that item. And we can only use that, we can only use the invoice. An accurate invoice presented to a customs officer. So the moment you present that invoice, we'll make now an assessment of taxes, and then you'll be given a slip. Yeah, you'll be given an e-slip, and you'll go to the bank and make your payment. All arrivals at the airport, they have a 24-hour operational bank for collection of taxes. Customs, you do not accept cash payments. Yes, payments are paid at the bank after an issuance of an e-slip or a payment slip.
Right, and what happens if someone, say, as you said, you've decided in your discretion you're choosing the green channel, but then it's discovered that you have something to declare? How does that? How do you work around it now?
Yes, misdeclaration or failure to declare to customs is a customs offense. Yes, there's a whole provision on how we deal with the misdeclaration. Yeah, so what we've really tried at the airport is we've done a lot of sensitization because we would want an informed passenger. It's always good to deal with somebody who's informed. And you'd find where there's a misdeclaration, we'll go through the whole process of just getting to know why you're declaring, and the officer there will be able now to ask you, and we'll be like, now we need now to go through the process of probably compounding, and fines will be levied on that. And we'd find, okay, this is common, I would say, for people who would want to bring in restricted items or would want to bring in prohibited items. Yeah, but rarely do we have cases where somebody wanted really to outright evade taxes. No, we have informed passengers, and they would come forth and say, you know what, I would want to pay my correct taxes. Yes. Right.
You've been mentioning restricted and prohibited items. Let's just now delve into that. Could you take us through what restricted items are and maybe mention a few of them?
Thank you very much. Restricted items are those goods that the importation got to meet a certain condition prior to importation into the country. For example, if you want to bring in a firearm, arms and ammunition, you've got to get a permit from Firearm Licensing Board to allow you first to import a firearm and to possess a firearm. So those are restricted items. There's an example. If you want to bring in a drone or an unmanned aerial vehicle is restricted. You need to get a letter of no objection from Ministry of Defense and an operation permit from Kenya Civil Aviation Authority. If you want to convey monetary instruments or currency in excess of $10,000 US, you're supposed to make a declaration to customs under the Process of Crime and Anti-Money Laundering Act. Customs will receive that declaration. We are saying it's not illegal to all this. If you want to take out gold, you want to bring in gold, you need a permit to export gold or to deal in minerals. Those are restricted items. So you'd find for you to bring in any restricted item, you've got to meet the conditions of importing those particular items or even probably exporting those particular items. And you'd find the customs laws gives customs power now to control the importation and the exportation of this restricted item unless the conditions are met. So if you're bringing in medicaments, for example, you need to get a permit from Pharmacy and Poisons for you to be able not to bring in those medicaments, because they are medicaments or medicine which are controlled or they are probably not supposed to be used in Kenya. So you'd find restricted items are those that you need to fulfill a condition that governs the importation and even probably the usage of that particular item in the country. Yeah, so that is now, that's the difference. Okay, that is the first category of the restricted items. Yes.
Yes. Still on the restricted items, say you've brought in something that is restricted.
Yes.
And you have not met those requirements before getting to the airport. Is there any way that you can be assisted within the airport to meet them, or what will happen in that case?
Thank you very much. From what I'd said earlier, you find a border is layered, where you'll come through port health, immigration, then you come to customs. As per customs, it is still you are still deemed to be foreign. You have not entered the country. So what would happen is, if you have restricted items, you'd come in and make a declaration to customs that, for example, I'm a firearm holder licensed back in, allow me to use America. I'm a firearm holder back in America, and I'm coming back. I'm coming to Kenya probably to visit a relative or even on holiday. And I declare the firearm back there, and you are allowed to come with it. Yeah, of course, probably through checked-in bag. So when you get here, you'll come through customs, make that declaration that, hold on, I want to bring in a firearm with ammunition, and back at the country of origin, where I've just departed, I'm licensed. First, we'll check on those licenses and be comfortable with that. Then we'll ask you, do you have any license to bring it into the country? Do you have the license to possess it? And if you don't have that license at that point, customs will deposit it. We'll keep it in our customs warehouse. It will be deposited, and you'll be issued with a notice to deposit goods in a customs warehouse, and given a chance to go and try to get the requisite permits or to meet the conditions. Yeah, so at that point, we'll be able now to deposit it at the customs warehouse. Yeah, so what would happen is somebody would bring in medicaments, and they're like, I wanted to use these medicaments. There are those which are straightforward, probably. I would want to mention this, that somebody had gone out for medication. They had gone out for treatment, and they're coming back with a prescription. Those ones, we clear them because those are on prescription. Yeah, a doctor has prescribed for you to bring in these medicaments. But issues like firearms, drones, those ones, you need a permit to operate them locally. So if you don't meet that condition at the airport, we'll keep, say, the firearm there. And at the point of departure, on production of the notice that you are issued when you are depositing it, customs officers will escort you on board, and you will go back with your item to where you came from. Yes.
Okay, yes. So you will not be arrested. It can be kept for you.
Yeah, we'll keep it. But in an event that probably you sneak it in, that will be, you smuggled it. You've escaped the customs control, and you're found in possession of a restricted item locally or in the country. Now you're liable for probably an arrest, even prosecution.
Okay.
Yes.
Right. Now let's talk about the prohibited items.
Yes.
What are they, and how are you dealing with them?
Yes. Prohibited items are those items which the importation is prohibited. You don't need to meet any condition to import it. They are prohibited. They are not allowed into the country. For example, obscene materials and pornographic articles, they are not allowed into the country. Used undergarments are not allowed. All counterfeit items, fake money, they are not allowed into the country. So they are totally prohibited. Narcotics and psychotropic substances are not allowed into the country at all. So those ones are prohibited. You are not supposed to bring them into the country. 100%. So in an event that you bring in prohibited items, there are those items that probably are liable for arrest and prosecution. For example, if you are dealing with narcotics, what would happen is at the airport we work in a multi-agency approach as guided by the government, where you'd find if there is an issue of narcotics, the anti-narcotics unit under the National Police Service will take the lead role. So customs will participate in the interception of these drug mules, and now we'll hand over the matter to, after going through all the processes of proving that, okay, for sure you are bringing in narcotics, and you'll find mostly the people who want to smuggle in narcotics, they will conceal them. Either they've ingested them in their body, either they've done insertion in their body, or they have concealed them in their suitcases. So you wouldn't find somebody openly coming with, say, cocaine. Yeah, so they will try the means possible probably to conceal them. So once you're able now to identify that probably you are high risk, probably you could be a drug mule based on the intelligence that we have, advanced information. We'll call in the multi-agency team. We have our K9s which can detect narcotics. At that point, we'll be able now to say, upon positive detection, customs will seize. We seize all prohibited items. And upon seizure, we'll be able now to hand it over to anti-narcotics. We'll start now the whole investigation because it will lead to prosecution. So when you're bringing in prohibited items, there are those which really calls for prosecution after an investigation has been done, because you'd find there's a transnational nature in that particular crime. Yes. And then there are those prohibited items that probably won't call for prosecution. For example, if you're bringing in obscene or pornographic articles, sex toys and all those, you'd find at this point we'll just seize them at the point of entry. Yeah, if you're bringing in at that point we'll be able to seize. If you're bringing in counterfeit items, those ones they'll be seized. We won't allow them to come into our country. Yes.
And what happens to these items once they're seized?
Okay, we could let's start with all goods deposited in a customs warehouse. Can be, there are various ways of disposal. One, through an auction. Yeah, after and those ones probably, I would say mostly they are those items that are taxable. Then there are those probably through donations, as the commissioner may deem fit. Then the other one would be through destruction process. So would start probably with items that taxes have not been paid. For items that taxes probably have not been paid, and they are not prohibited and restricted, those ones they'll go through the whole auction process where they'll be gazetted, and then they'll be bidding. Then reserve prices are provided. Then it will go through an auction process as a disposal means. Then we have restricted items. Restricted items, for restricted items, the passenger is allowed to re-export first. Yeah, you can re-export. Yeah, if you can't re-export, if it is to go through an auction process, you've got to fulfill the conditions of for the importation of that particular item. That you've got to make sure that you've got all the requisite permits before it goes through the process. For prohibited items, those ones are liable for, they'll be condemned, and they'll go through a destruction process. A destruction process, you'd find we have a whole multi-agency team that handles the issues of destruction, and we'd find that we have to go through the whole process of how are we going to destroy this particular item, which is the best mode of destruction. So we'll be guided by NEMA on which is the best mode of destruction. At that point, it will go through the whole destruction process, and a destruction certificate will be issued once we've gone through the process. For the ones that probably are liable for prosecution, those ones, the lead agency will take those items, and they'll be presented as exhibits when the prosecution commences.
All right.
Yes.
We are speaking with Robert Kirer. He's the manager of Customs and Border Control at the Kenya Revenue Authority, and he's based at the JKIA Jomo Kenyatta International Airport. And we are talking about the things that you are restricted from bringing, what you need to do to make sure that they are legally brought into the country, as well as the things that you have prohibited from bringing into the country. Now, my name is Betty Kiptum. We want to take a quick break here on BizCheck. When we come back, this conversation continues. Do stay with us.
Your Majesty.
Chiyu.
No matter what happens, I'll let you and Chiyu live happily.
Go get Dr. Chung.
Yes.
Your Majesty.
I'm the Grand Emperor. Open the gate. Yunchen.
Stay back.
Her death. I swear I had nothing to do with it.
Ni sauti ya mwaliko wa kituo chetu cha Kisomali Iftin FM ikipiga mbizi na njaramba kukutana na mashabiki katika road show babu kubwa hapa jijini Nairobi tarehe 27 mwezi huu. Msafara utaanza katikati ya jiji la Nairobi kuelekea South C, South B, maeneo ya Eastlands kama vile Komarok, Donholm, Fedha, Eastleigh na kuregea katikati ya jiji la Nairobi. Jitokeza tarehe 27 mwezi huu, kutane ana kwa ana na watangazaji wa Iftin FM. Vichekesho na mahanja mtele vitateremka kwa mpigo re.
Iftin hal eber hal dibi sagal. Iftin FM ilayska umada.
Class, I hope you've given her a warm welcome. This is Magdalene Chepkoech. She's our new student.
They have mwalimu hata wamenitengenezea simu. Kinyanjui.
Are you sure you know all those things?
Who do you think you are talking to? Kenyadu's online shop will bring it to her.
Julia, you cannot believe what just happened.
What?
Imagine the selfie I posted 30 minutes ago. It has now 9 likes.
Adi. Tito Mjwanjuku nasikiza. There's something called Broadband. Respect it.
Do you pay school fees like the rest of us?
Of course, yes.
Then sit down like the rest of us.
Kinyanjui.
Classmates, every Saturday on KBC.
Thank you very much for staying with Channel 1. You are watching BizCheck. My name is Betty Kiptum. Remember, you can interact with us throughout this program. On Twitter, we are at KBC Channel 1. My personal Twitter handle is at Betty Kiptum. On Facebook as well, we are at KBC Channel 1 News. Tell us what you think, ask your questions, and I shall be passing them through to the guest. In studio, we are with Robert Kirer, the manager of Customs and Border Control at the Kenya Revenue Authority, currently positioned at the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport. And we have been talking about matters customs control. He has told us what prohibited goods are, what restricted goods are. Kirer, take us through the wildlife. I mean, the fight against wildlife, destruction, it takes international efforts. So what exactly happens at customs on that end?
Yeah, thank you very much. Illegal wildlife trade is, I would say, is the third largest transnational crime, and it has taken the efforts of the global efforts to really fight this particular vice, because it really affects our heritage, is a great revenue earner through tourism, and customs will play a major role in really intercepting and probably trying to fight this particular vice. Because what would happen is customs have unique, I would say, skills in fighting this particular vice. And what really you'd see in the global supply chain, customs are strategically positioned in what we call the choke points. At any given time, they've got to be an origin, they've got to be a transit point, and they've got to be a destination. And then in the past, what we've noted, especially at Jomo Kenyatta International Airport, because of our connectivity, especially to West Africa, JK being a hub for a national carrier, I would find that in the past, our airport had been used as a transit point to smuggle illegal wildlife trophies, probably from West Africa through Jomo to Far East, because you'd find there's the origin, then we have the transit point being probably our country, and then the destination. So in the past, one as customs working under the World Customs Organization, working with the various consortiums, we've been able now to really build capacity to all customs officers. You'd find the membership of the World Customs Organization, 182 countries. We are in a small village, and the World Customs Organization has been able now to build what we call the information tools that we use now to communicate and exchange information. Talk of EnviroNet is one of the platforms that we use. We have what we call the Customs Enforcement Network. We have the Regional Intelligence Liaison Offices. These are all tools that are available to customs officers to exchange information on issues of illicit trade, including illegal wildlife trade. So our part is we've trained officers now to be able now to identify what is being trafficked. And officers have really been, we build capacity to check on which is the most trafficked trophies, and find currently the most trafficked trophies is the pangolin scales. Because of its huge appetite probably in the country of destination or usage. So our officers have been trained to really look at identify these particular items. We use various methods like exchange of information is critical for us. Use of an unintrusive inspection, scanners, and working with the Kenya Wildlife Service. Kenya Wildlife Service is the competent authority and the management authority for issues related to wildlife trade. You'd find that at the airports or at all the points of entries, we are working with the Kenya Wildlife wardens, officials, and they are part of the Border Management Committee. At all points of entries and exit, we have a functional, currently we have 28 functional border management committees trying to cover all our points of entries. So we have a joint operations center that now brings in a multi-agency or officers from different government authorities or agencies working at a point of entry for us now to be able now to really fight as a team. So anything that is touching on wildlife, you'd find that whenever there is such an interception, you'd find a customs officer would find a passenger with, say for example, worked ivory, worn as a bangle, would immediately call in the wildlife personnel, would come, and they will be able now to positively identify that these are worked ivory, and at that point now they are the ones now who will take the lead role in now doing the investigation and prosecution of that particular matter. So what has really assisted, I would say, our country is at the point of entries is that we are working in a collaborated and a coordinated manner under the Border Management Committee framework, because guided by the framework that we have under the Border Operation and Coordination Committee, we're able now to coordinate. So all agencies would coordinate, so everyone brings in their expertise, and we're able now to play a role. But as I had mentioned earlier, customs, we really have a role to enforce. You know, customs officers, we have a power to enforce other laws of the country and relating on movement of goods, because you're looking at this movement of in and out of goods into our country, and probably even our country being used as a transit point. So we've been able in the past to even intercept products of, I would say, wildlife, which were illegally acquired and were illegally being trafficked through our supply chain. and I'd say our country was being used as a transit point.
Okay.
Yes, and those are matters that we've really been able to intercept. Yeah.
I'm curious, is ignorance a defense? Say you are somewhere outside the country, you come across the bangle and you think it's a beautiful thing to own, and then you buy it. When you come here, it's realized that it's ivory. How would someone, maybe the person wearing that bangle, go around it?
Quite a tricky one, because I'd say ignorance would be no defense in such a matter, because illegal wildlife trade probably is a transnational crime. Yeah, it has that nature, and it's quite big, related to, you'd find whenever there is illegal wildlife trade is related to, say, narcotics, related to human trafficking and all that. So you'd find in such a matter, upon discovery, you'll go through the whole process of being handed over to the wildlife officials, being the competent authority, going through the whole prosecution, and probably you'll go through a judicial process, to ensure that justice is served. So you'll have to really face that, because we've seen such cases in the past, and I wouldn't say probably you didn't know. So ours is just to really encourage the traveling community of passengers, always be on the look. I know before you do something, and if you are in doubt, it's always good to really ask. Just tend to go find additional information about that particular product. And we've really done so much in trying to sensitize people, do sensitization on this, build capacity, pass out information through the various channels. If you go to our care website, we have the customs handbook that talks about what you're supposed to own, what you're supposed to have, what is prohibited, what is restricted. The passenger declaration form gives you information. Yeah.
All right.
On that matter.
Wow. And if someone, say, wants to import, to travel with their pet, from another country and come into the country with it, or even going outside, what do they need to meet to get that pet into the country or outside?
Okay, there are two scenarios here. You can bring in a pet through the cargo side, where you just send in a pet. It fulfills all the conditions set by the airline to bring in a pet. And what will be required is first, the veterinary will play a key role in clearing that particular pet. So we've got to ensure that you have all the requisites, I'll say vaccination records, all the reports, I would say the health reports that will be required by the vets before they allow you into the country. Then we have other pets that are accompanying passengers. We've had cases where somebody walking around, as much as it's not a pet, it could be even been an aid. Somebody probably who's partially blind, and they're using probably a pet as an aid. With that, first, as customs officer, we recognize pets to be part of the family.
Okay.
Yes. So whenever they'll be presented to us, we would ask for the vaccination, all the medical, all the health records for that particular pet. Once we've done that, the vet official or doctor will come, check on those records, just to ensure that for sure they're meeting all the conditions that are required before the importation. So movement of pets with passengers, we allow, and we've seen cases where a family appears with a pet, and they would want us to clear that particular pet, and we do that. Yes.
All right. Let's now talk about the processes that go through, that these goods go through. How have you modernized them, and maybe what tools do you use to ensure that you nab these illegal activities?
Yeah, thank you very much. Customs are really, and the authority in large, we've really gone through a lot of modernization in view of simplifying our processes, in view of facilitating trade, and in view of really facilitating clearance of passengers. And of a particular, allow me to share this at all our airports, is that first we have scanners at all our arrivals. So we have two kind of scanners. We have scanners that we use to scan all checked-in bags. So all the checked-in bags are scanned jointly with Kenya Post Authority and Customs. So we do scan all bags. And at some point, probably some passengers would notice that there are some bags which have been marked. Yeah, whenever we scan, and the customs officer or the scanner officer identifies that there are some items that probably need further scrutiny or they need for secondary inspection, at that point they'll be marked. And as passengers, whenever you see your bag has been marked, there's no need to panic. Always present yourself to customs and like, okay, my bag has been marked, and be like, yes, there is need for secondary inspection just to check what is in. We've noticed that in the past people used to bring in drones, carrying them by their hands, but nowadays they tend to put it in their checked-in bags. We'll be able to pick it because we'll see the moment you screen it, we'll be able to pick it, and you'd find somebody would want to put in a drone in their bags. We've seen firearms being checked in. Those ones we're able now to pick them at that point. Yeah, so we have the scanners that we use. Then we have the city scanners. These are the scanners now you'd find in our red and the green channel. These ones we use them to scan 100% carry-on bags. Carry-on bags, and there's where probably you'd find high-value items have been placed in. Items that were purchased probably at the duty-free from the country of departure, would scan them. We are doing this because we would want, to the larger extent, we would want to avoid opening passengers' bags. We only open a bag that really warrants a secondary inspection and probably informed by either an advance information on that particular passenger or intelligence, or what a scanner or what the scanner has really pointed that there is need for us now to go deeper and probably just to check what is inside that particular bag. And for us not to do the secondary inspection, we'll go through observing all the COVID protocols, that okay, we sanitize our hands, probably would even ask the passenger to open. We ask the passenger to open their bag and probably to make a declaration at that point. So we make a declaration at that point and say, oh, you know, in my bag, I have a firearm which I checked in from the country of origin, or I have a drone, or I have some liquids, I have some whatever really been picked at that point. You're able not to make that declaration. I have foodstuffs that I've checked in, because you know the scanner will be able not to show us the different images. Then we have the K9. We have our four-legged officers trained to pick out narcotics and explosives. So you'd find we are using our the K9 just to randomly screen the bags, having being the different profiles. So we use the K9. Yeah, so we'd find at that point now the K9 will be able not to, if this positively identify a bag that requires inspection, we'll undertake and say our K9 are able to even pick out some contrabands. Yeah. So we are really working on now building capacity on that, probably to get the K9 that can easily pick out bulk cash, smuggling, those people who would want to carry bulk cash. Yeah, so we have the K9 that we are using at this point. Then critical for us is the exchange of information. We are working, as I mentioned earlier, you'll find all these predicate offenses, or these offenses, they have a transnational nature in it. So we are working with our strategic partners to exchange information, and we be able to build capacity. So where we can, using now the various air communication platform, we're able now to exchange information with members, where somebody would say, oh, Kenya, there is somebody coming your way that you need to check, and this is what we suspect. And those information or intelligence have really been of great assistance for us now to be able now to pick out restricted items and probably some prohibited items that would really be sneaked into the country.
Okay.
Yes.
You've mentioned about the bags and the systems of checking them. What happens now when it's the ingested narcotics, or the ones in people's bodies, let's say that?
Yeah, quite interesting. Over time, we've been able now to work with, first, we work with the airlines, where we are able now to get information and probably even just to check on behaviors. of these passengers, of these what we call them drug mules. And you'd find at times we get advance information that, okay, there's this person, based on the various profiles that we've been able now to build over time, getting even to know the kind of flights that would be really be abused. Yeah, there's some flights that come in at probably at 1 a.m. Yeah, and there's a connection to that flight probably from a country which is prone to be a source of, say, narcotics. Yeah, we look at such a profile. So over time, we've been able now to build a profile, and customs officers have been trained working with the anti-narcotics at the point of entries to be able now to identify this person who really got, I would say, signs of somebody who has really ingested these narcotics. So we have the trafficking routes. We've been able to build capacity on that. The various concealment methods, the ingestion, probably even using, putting like, attaching them in their bodies. So you'd find somebody probably got an unproportionate posture, or even how they are standing, how they are moving through the terminal. You know, there are those basic signs a trained officer can able to pick and say, wow, this one looks off, overdressed person. You know, we have the various profiles or mechanism that we've been able to be trained as customs officers to be able not to identify and say, wow, this one looks off. Yeah, that person really will have some misdemeanors, so will have some characteristics which are just off. And a trained customs officer will be able now to pick and say, wow, this doesn't look right. Yeah, so at that point now we'll be able now to positively identify, and then the whole process now starts. Anti-narcotics will take over the issues of now doing the urine tests, able to find out when was the last meal they had, all those things now. They'll go through the whole process. And I'll say for the people that we've really interacted and probably intercepted, the moment you just intercept them, they'll be like, oh, you know what? I've been holding this for so long, I just need to get them out, you know. Yeah, so they usually open up immediately, like, you know what, I'm done with this, and I'll go to this point. So usually we're able to really identify that. Is one of our key role, especially at the borders, to ensure that the mules don't really use, or they don't bring in narcotics into our country. Yes.
Very important. Now, if someone, say, is preparing to travel, what are some tips that you can give them, you know, as they prepare to travel?
Yeah, when you're traveling, it's always good to get familiar first with the, I would say, the customs conditions and regulations set out. You know, you'd find customs really is global, and you'd find there are various conditions that probably you need to fulfill. For example, if you're moving in, if you're conveying currency in excess of $10,000 US, you just need to make a declaration. It's not illegal to move with such money. They are restricted. You need to familiarize yourself with that. If I'm leaving a country, the country with, say, in excess of $10,000 US, I need to go to customs and make a declaration that I'm moving with this. So it's always good to familiarize yourself with what are the conditions or what are the regulations in place from the country of departure to even country of origin. It's always good to know if you are going to India, for example, what are the conditions governing importation of jewelry in India? What are the conditions that regulate importation of, say, a mineral to another country? What are the limits for the currency you can carry to a foreign country? It's always good to familiarize yourself. So at the airport, would always encourage passengers, if you're traveling, always get familiar with what is required. It's like when you go to the airport, you'll be told you cannot go into the aircraft with any liquid more than 100 ml. That is an aviation condition that has really been set out under Annex ICAO Annex 17 on issues of security, that you're supposed to ensure that you meet that condition, so that you don't get, when you get to the airport, you are told, no, you know what, you have to leave this lotion, and you can't believe that you're leaving your lotion there, you know, probably your item there. It's always good to really get familiar. In terms of customs, critical for us is if you're taking out some items that you need to bring them back into the country, Those ones you need to always make a declaration to customs that I'm going out with jewelry, for example. I'm attending a wedding and I'm supposed to be at my best that particular occasion, and I'm going out with my box of jewelry and I'll bring it back into the country. You need to come and make a declaration to customs that, oh, I'm going out with this jewelry and I'll bring them into the country. Or so that, and will be issued with their importation certificate, so that when you come in, it becomes easier when you're bringing, when you're coming back. So that you don't have to you need to explain, oh, this was my jewelry, because at that point, when we detect it, at the point of importation, if you are not declared, it will be deemed that probably you purchased it while you're traveling, and taxes will be payable. So you'd find that if you are going out, jewelry is something that we've seen very common. Sporting equipments. Yeah, we have our golfers who are going out to play golf, international tournaments, and they are going with their clubs. It's always good to declare that, okay, I'm going out and bring it back. We have our DJs who are going in with their turntables, their spin tables. They would want to bring it back. Yeah, so those ones just need to declare. You are going out with your working tools. You are going out for just a professional work, which you need to carry your professional toolbox. You just need to declare to customs that I'm going out with this, and I'll be coming back with it. So when you make that declaration, you'll go with it. You'll be issued with their importation certificate, so that when you come back, customs will just be looking at the serial numbers just to confirm that for sure that you took out is what you're bringing in. But in an event that probably you took out an item for repair, which you intend to bring in, the service charge on the cost of the repair is usually critical for us for payment of taxes. Taxes is payable on the charge that was used probably to repair that particular tool. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So when you come back, we would be asking you, okay, you are taking this item out for repair. Yes, and it has been fixed, and this was the cost of the repair. We'll be able not to levy taxes on that cost.
That's interesting to know.
Yes.
Well, as we come to a close of the conversation, what would be your closing remarks? 30 seconds.
What I would encourage the members of public, especially our passengers, is get familiar with the requirements that have been set out by customs. It makes it easy when you have an informed passenger. Yeah, so that there is, whenever we are going through the questioning of passenger, getting to know what is the purpose of travel, we're able not to really interact freely. And we've really, as an authority, we've really gone through a lot of sensitization. We really want an informed passenger through the various platforms, this included, where we are informing our passengers, our esteemed customers, that you need to know what you need to know about prohibitions, what you need to know about restrictions, what are your concessions, what are your maximum allowable concession or items that you can bring in. It's always good. Always check on our KRA website for the customs handbook that really outlines what can be brought into the country, the issues of donations, how we deal with donations, and then always fill up the passenger declaration form. There's a passenger declaration form that the airlines would issue on board. Take time to fill, and I would really want to encourage especially your brothers and sisters, the Kenyans, that you need to declare, even if you have nothing to declare. Always fill up that passenger declaration form, even if you have a nil thing, a nil, yes, a nil item. Always tick. There's a box for nil. Always tick it, and always try to give a truthful declaration to customs.
Right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for speaking with us. Well, the message today is be an informed passenger. Be an informed passenger, lest you be told you're carrying ivory that you did not know was ivory, and then you're nabbed and probably go to jail for ignorance. Well, that's it for BizCheck this particular morning. Thank you very much for staying with us throughout the 2 hours we've had. My name is Betty Kiptum. Gladys Mungai is coming up next with Kurunzi. Do have yourself a lovely afternoon. Bye-bye.
Class, I hope you've given her a warm welcome. This is Magdalene Chepkoech. She's our new student.
They have mwalimu hata wamenitengenezea simu.
Kinyanjui. Are you sure you know all those things?
Who do you think you are talking to? Kenyaju's online shop will bring it to her.
Julia, you cannot believe what just happened.
What?
Imagine the selfie I posted 30 minutes ago. It has now 9 likes.
Tito Mjwanjuku unasikiza, there's something called Broadband. Respect it.
Do you pay school fees like the rest of us?